So you guys have been asking me to cover the How to Train Your Dragon Infection AU by Sneep Snop for like 4 months. And I know I'm late, but I'm finally getting to it. And I will say, this one is heat. And since Snop just added a new part, I think this will be the perfect time to actually cover it. But fair warning, go ahead and bail out now if you don't want to be scared, because this one is on par with the Trolls Infection AU as far as like creepy artwork goes. Now, from what I've pieced together so far, it seems like some type of virus or parasite has infected the How to Train Your Dragon universe. And one of the first videos we see Snop uploaded shows the phases and the symptoms of this infection. And as most of you have probably figured out by now, yes, Toothless is the first character that we see to actually get infected. And in phase 1, we see that he still looks relatively fine, and you can't really tell that anything is wrong here. But once we get to stage 2, you can see fluid starts to drip from Toothless's eyes and his nose, while he also starts to look very tired, and he's craving water at this point. Phase 3 is the point of no return for the infected. At this stage, the dragons start to lose their eyesight, they can no longer eat, and they are slowly wasting away until they get to phase 4. And at this point, they're basically just the Walking Dead. The dragon's eyes will rot out of their head, and their body basically just becomes a shriveled husk. And while they are technically still alive, their mind is so far gone that they may as well be dead. The only thing to do at this point is just to put them out of their misery. But if you do allow the dragons to live past that stage, it will just become aggressive and start to attack friend and foe, which we will see from like Toothless in a moment. But before that, let me explain how this infection came to be. So from my understanding, there seems to be some type of virus in the water that has corrupted the fish and the drinking water in general for the dragons and the Vikings. So for instance, when the dragons go and drink from this pool or eat the fish from the pool, they are consuming the eggs of a parasitic worm that will rest in their stomach until it hatches, and then it will work its way up to the dragon's brain. Once there, it begins to grow these tendrils and it latches itself in place. And if it was just one worm, it wouldn't be that huge of a deal. But I think Fishlegs, who I believe is the one that's actually writing these little entries here, has stated that when they found infected dragons and opened them up, they found hundreds of worms inside of them, all around the sizes of like maggots. Now the good news is that it seems that the infected dragons cannot infect others just by biting or attacking them. I say this because at this point we see that Toothless has already attacked Stormfly, and while she is hurt, she is still clean of the infection. And while that is good news, infected Toothless is still very dangerous. And in this video, we see that Hiccup is having a bit of a flashback, and we get to see this image of Toothless smiling before turning into his husk form. And creepy enough, it still looks like he's smiling here. Then we see that Hiccup has had his arm bitten off, and the Light Fury has had a piece of her neck bitten off by Toothless. And the only reason that Hiccup seems to survive this encounter is because this dragon called Sleuther steps in and jabs Toothless right in the eye, which drives him away temporarily. And this kind of surprised me because I'm pretty sure that Toothless is stronger than Sleuther, but maybe since the infection has taken his mind, he has lost like some of his combat ability, which is kind of a common thing with a lot of infection AUs. Now, after that scene, we see that Astrid and Volka, who is Hiccup's mother, find him sitting alone and injured, now missing an arm on top of the leg that he was already missing. And seeing him in that state, Astrid is ready to avenge him, but Hiccup lets her know that that axe is not going to be enough to put down Toothless in his new undead form. This is also where we get confirmation that the Light Fury is dead, which I thought was pretty obvious, but a lot of people were holding out hope that she would have actually survived the attack. And as Valka is trying to figure out how Hiccup survived, we see that Dagger comes out of the bushes, revealing that he and his dragon saved Hiccup. Now in the next scene, we see Hiccup and his crew all together discussing what happened so far, and we learn that there were 3 babies that were attacked by Toothless, and only one of them was able to survive. And while that is sad, we see that Dagger is here to cut some of the tension by asking if he can have the baby Night Fury, since he is the one that saved it, and then he hits us with the actually pose here. And while that was a funny little moment, what happens next is not. Now with this scene, a lot of people thought that Toothless attacked Stormfly, while others thought that the person standing right here is Astrid. But in actuality, this is Hiccup. And if you slow down the video, you can see that Toothless actually attacks him, not Stormfly. I assume that he either wanted to finish what he started, or he just went after the target that he thought was the weakest. And while we don't know what happens to the rest of Hiccup's group after that attack, we do know that things around Burke are not going well. Many of the dragons have already fallen victim to the parasite, and even some of the Vikings are getting infected as well. Now, the saddest of the infected dragons are definitely Barf and Belch. We see that Barf started showing signs of the infection, so they figure that maybe if they remove its head, Belch will have a chance at surviving. Snop even gives us a little cutscene here where we see the twins getting ready to cut off his head. And a lot of people had a hard time making out this image here, but from my understanding, this is Tough holding an axe, and Ruff is trying to comfort Barf, letting him know that everything is going to be okay. But judging by how much she's crying and by how much mucus and pus the parasites are pumping out of Barf, we all know that this is a lie. And the last thing that Barf hears is Ruff telling him that she loves him, and then they swing the axe and take off his head. And while this is sad, the good news is that Belch seems to not be showing any symptoms, meaning that they did make the right choice here, but he's obviously still very sad about it. And after that, when they went and opened Barf's head to examine it, they found a bunch of worms inside, which of course was their first hint as to what was happening on this island. The final scene that we see with Belch is him laying on the floor here while people are arguing outside, and we see him trying to use his ability, but it obviously can't work without Barf. Then we see one of the twins come over to comfort him, letting him know that everything will be okay. And while a lot of people think that they were arguing outside about taking Belch out just like they did Barf, I think that that's not the case, because at this point, the Vikings have two huge problems. The first being the dragons called the Whispering Death, who have been sneaking into the homes of Vikings and kidnapping anyone that they deem to be easy prey. So old people, wounded people, and children are like their top priority. And since these dragons attack at night and can also hide underground, the Vikings are having a hard time defending against them. And here's the creepiest part. Two children who were eaten but cut out of the dragon's belly before they died told the other Vikings that the dragon spoke to them. And then we get this animation.
Wake up. Wake up. Wake up.
And if that isn't bad enough, the Vikings also received this letter from Dagger stating that he found Hiccup and will be back soon, which obviously aged poorly. But the very next day, the Vikings started getting reports of a zombie walking around the village, which means that these parasites do not just affect the fish and the dragons. So if any humans have eaten the infected fish or drank that tainted water, they will likely turn as well. And since humans are far less durable than dragons, the worms chew through their bodies much faster. Now, the Vikings didn't want to waste this opportunity, so they caught the zombie and took it in for testing. But the very next day, they noticed that the zombie had escaped. And they know that it's only a matter of time before it starts attacking people, just like the dragons do. Now, speaking of infected dragons, I'm going to go ahead and list all the dragons that already are infected and the ones that are immune, or were able to actually fight off the infection. Make sure to put your favorite dragon down in the comments and put a skull next to their name if they actually got infected, or a heart if your favorite dragon survived. The first dragon on our victim list is going to be the Smothering Smoke Breath, and while their smoke isn't as hot as it was before they got turned into husk, it does still have the potential to infect people and dragons, which may be another reason that the infection is spreading so fast. The Snapple Fang is next, and this one is especially dangerous, not just for the fact that it's like 30 feet long, but also because it's very aggressive, kind of like Toothless. And this means that once it spots you, it's going to attack and will destroy anything in its path to get to you. Next, we have the Bone Napper, and some of you may be confused as to why a skeleton dragon can be infected in the first place. And it's because this dragon is a living creature, but its body is so fragile that it covers itself in the bones of other dragons to protect itself. And ironically enough, now it actually is dead instead of just looking dead. The only good news is that since they didn't have much meat on them before, now that the parasite has eaten and taken root, the dragons are too weak to really be a threat to anyone. I also found it kind of funny that Snop gave us a little Sans reference here. The next victim is the Skrill, and I believe he has a lightning breath, and with this knowledge, I thought that he would be able to clear the worms out by using his breath weapon, or just by staying in his cold habitat, but it seems like neither of those were enough. Once the worms got inside of him, they rewired his brain so that he would protect the worms inside of him and attack anyone that came close to his lair. Next, we have the Timberjack, and it seems like the infection has taken its ability to fly. So now this dragon just hides in trees and waits for Vikings or animals to walk by so they can drop on them and chop off their heads or just split them in half in general. Next, we have the Sandwrath, and I thought that this one was especially sad. When these dragons get infected, they try to use the sand around them to repair their decaying flesh as the worms are devouring them. And in reality, this only speeds up the process of their demise. And since they are very slow now, they don't really act as a threat to anyone. The Snap Trapper is another sad one because it seems like only the head that eats the infected fish is the one that transforms, while the others stay relatively healthy. But as the infected head gets sicker and sicker, it will begin to attack the other heads, eventually making it so that the infected head or heads are the only ones living. So the twins definitely made the right call with Barf and Belch, even though it was a sad outcome. Next on the infected list, we have the Typhoomerang, and I was surprised to see that this one wasn't a huge threat when infected, because when it was alive, these dragons could be a real pain in the neck. But for whatever reasons, when the Vikings did come upon it, it didn't even really try to attack them. And later on, they even saw a group of non-infected Typhoomerang basically hold a funeral for their friend. And before it was all over, they even burned the body, very reminiscent to like how Vikings do for their dead. Next on the list, we have the Speed Stinger, and while compared to other dragons, these guys are considered small, but they are still huge for humans, considering that they're around 7 feet tall. And this is a big deal because they are some of the more aggressive dragons when infected, running down anyone that they see. And it also seems like the virus has made them faster somehow. So the Vikings have been told to avoid their areas at all costs. And just to paint the picture, these guys are basically like the velociraptors from Jurassic Park. So trying to get away from them would be almost impossible unless you had like a motorcycle, well, or I guess a dragon. Next, we have the Death Song. And this one was sad because as the name suggests, this dragon used to be able to sing when it was alive, but now that its body is falling apart, it can no longer sing. But the real sad part is that it doesn't realize that its body is falling apart, so it just stands with its mouth open for hours trying to sing, and nothing comes out except like this weird hissing sound because of course its lungs and everything inside of it is giving out. And that's if it can open its mouth at all, because now that it's infected, it cannot control its amber breath, so it just solidifies in or around its mouth, and as you can kind of see here, and that can force its jaw to be sealed shut. This one was definitely one of the more brutal ones on the list. Next, we have the Cavern Crasher, and this is a very dangerous one if you wander into one of their caves. They will basically grab you and drag you through every tunnel and path until your body is completely broken. The good news though is that they can easily be avoided as long as the Vikings just stay out of their cave. They really should be fine. And now that we covered all the infected dragons, let's go ahead and look at some of the dragons who are safe, starting with the Skull Crusher. This dragon is really important in this AU because it has a crazy good sense of smell, which means that it's able to detect when dragons are in the early stages of the infection. And this gives the Vikings a chance to try and cure the dragon, or put it down before it can become ravenous. And while I don't think that this dragon is immune to the parasite, I think that its sense of smell keeps it from consuming anything that may be tainted, which is why he's still alive and well. Next, we have the Hook Fang, who I'm sure is a crowd favorite, and I'm not surprised that this dragon is clean. It states that he has eaten some of the tainted fish, but since it has the ability to set itself on fire, he basically burns away all the worms before they can take hold. And I think this is why he has kind of become the primary dragon protector of Berk. He can protect himself by also burning the infected down as well. After that, we have Meatlug, and she is another dragon that does well in this AU, but it's mostly due to her diet. While most of the dragon's diets consist of fish, Meatlug prefers to eat stone. And now that Fishleg knows that the fish on this island are tainted, he makes sure to check every one of them before he feeds her, obviously to ensure that she doesn't actually get lost to the infection as well. After that, we have Cloud Jumper, who actually ended up getting infected, but since they caught it early, they were able to flush out his sinuses with salt water and surround him with fireworms to help burn the worms away. And it seems like this method actually worked, keeping another powerful dragon on the uninfected side. And I talked about her earlier, so we know that Stormfly is still uninfected, even though she was attacked by Toothless. Surprisingly as well, the Terrible Terrors are unaffected, at least thus far. And of course, you know that the Light Fury managed to avoid the infection, but we saw how she ended up. Now, something else that popped up in Snop's work is this image of a Night Fury called the Hunter, and I'm not sure if this is really a part of this AU or simply from a earlier version of the AU. But this dragon is unaffected and is actually hunting down infected dragons and taking them out. And from the looks of it, it has a rider because we see this spiked collar around its neck and also steel plated claws to make sure that it can rip dragons apart. We also see this light fury here called Ghost that got his wings ripped off and also part of his face. And while it still can go invisible, since its face hasn't healed yet, you can still see its disfigured face floating around. Another notable character was this Night Fury here called the Exterminator, and it was going around destroying pools of water that had infected fish. And I assume at one point this character was important because Snap even made a little animation for him. But as I said, I don't know if any of these characters actually made it into the final version of this AU, but I still thought it was worth mentioning them because they are pretty cool concept characters. Now, my prediction for this AU is that Dagger, Volca, and Aster are going to have to step up and get rid of this infected because I believe that Hiccup is definitely done for. I just don't see a way that he would have survived that attack from Toothless. And the only way I see this ending is if they burn away all the infected dragons and Vikings, which I know may sound brutal, but they don't really have a choice. And then after that, they can try to flesh out the parasites from the dragons and people that are not too far gone. And then they'll have to find every infected pool of water and burn that away as well to make sure that no one else can consume any of the infected fish or drink that water. With that being said though, I am curious to see how this AU ends and more specifically what part Toothless is going to play moving forward. And who knows, maybe I'll be surprised and Hiccup will make a return, somehow surviving the attack. As always though, if you enjoyed this video, check out this video on the screen here, subscribe to Daily, become a member of the Horse Force, and we will see you tomorrow with another one. Peace, peace.